Yes, I am Montana CPA Rick Reisig, not to be confused with Florida Governor Rick Scott. I do get that from time to time, and it's never followed by, because he's such a good-looking guy, it's because he's a tired-looking, bald-headed guy. And I even got that from my mother, not the tired, bald-headed guy part, but that I look like Governor Rick Scott. So I had to Google the guy, and sure enough, he kind of looks like that. So it's kind of a legacy here to be in Florida for that. What I wanted to start out in talking about the Board of Examiners report is kind of how I evolved into the Board of Examiners, because it does get to committee service. I'm on a committee right now with NASBA, the Compliance Assurance Committee, and it's a great committee led by Janice Gray. On that committee, it's been invaluable just because of the people I've met. People that are out there today, such as Jimmy Burks, David Miller, Jim Goad, great guys, and I really enjoy getting a chance to meet those guys and certainly serve NASBA. Prior to that, I was on the CPA Licensing and Examinations Committee, which is somewhat how I was able to be on the Board of Examiners. During my time on that committee, which has morphed into a different type of committee, it was led by Bob Pearson, then by Walter Davenport, and it was through that experience where I certainly got to meet Pamela Ives Hill, Tom Wyrick, and then get involved with the CPA exam. And then when the new agreement between NASBA and the AICPA and Prometric was signed and the composition of the Board of Examiners changed, I was allowed the opportunity to be on the Board of Examiners, and which I have found invaluable. The individuals on the Board of Examiners, those that are representative of state boards like myself, and those that aren't, are just fabulous to work with. The staff of the AICPA that deal with the exam are just fabulous to work with. They're all such intelligent people. I learn something every time I get with those folks, and I can't say enough about them. The reason I'm here today is because our chairperson, Wendy Perez, couldn't make it, and I mentioned that I was going to be here representing the state of Montana, so she asked if I could step in for her. So I'll do my best and fumble through. So yes, I am the chair of the day, not to be confused with any kind of Al Haig thing. It's just I'm glad to do it, and I think you know, the individuals that are on the Board of Examiners, again, are fabulous. What we're going to cover today are certainly volumes and trends of the exam, a Board of Examiners update, and then a State Board Committee update. And hopefully the comments that I give you guys will all be with the premise of what I wanted to know as a state board member in some of the trends that we'll go through, how many students are taking the exam, the type of students taking the exam, and so on. And so hopefully I'll give you the information that I, again, wanted to know as a state board member as well. The first chart here gives a graphic of the different years in the volume of the domestic exam, and Colleen's going to talk about the international exam here shortly. But as you can see, when you go from 2004 to 2012, you might be alarmed at the projection for 2012, and you might ask yourself, why the drop-off? Many of us, I think, remember at the end of 2010, there was a big push to have our candidates take the exam before we went to the new CBTE exam, the evolution of the computer-based exam, where there was some changes made with the different sections. Some sections were lengthened, some sections were shortened, and the essay parts of some of the exams were put out or pulled out of some of the sections and put into the business environment concept section. So there's a big push there. So that's why there's such a discrepancy, if you will, between the end of 2010 and the 2011 figures. If you were to average out the 2010-2011 figures, you would see that we are flatlining there a little bit, and that's what I think the projection would indicate. The next graphic here gives, again, the same type of information presented in a different format, broken out by quarters, if you will. And you can, again, see the same type of information if you looked at the 2010 row and went all the way to the October-November column, and you could see where that particular window, if you will, had an excessive amount of candidates taking the exam. Again, because of the big push for all those candidates to get all those parts into the exam before the changes. No one really understood from a candidate perspective what those changes would mean, if they would be dramatic, and so on. One of the things I think, if you look at 2004 to 2010, we were experiencing double-digit growth. Since 2011, 2012, our projections are single-digit growth. One of the things that we feel, I think, on the Board of Examiners, or at least hope, and this might be a challenge and a charge for the AICPA, as well as those of us involved with our state boards and NASBA, is to, while the candidate pool, just as Mary mentioned in a previous discussion, the candidate pool may not be growing, hopefully will entice more students to want to pursue accounting as a profession because of the aging demographics of our members, certainly the AICPA members, and Barry alluded to it this morning about the average age of the individuals in the profession, and there'll be great opportunity for those students. So I think the charge to, again, the AICPA and NASBA is to really get out the word to those students and that there's great opportunity there. There's going to be a volume that's going to be needed to be filled, and hopefully we'll be able to do that with the pool of candidates we have. Even though the numbers aren't growing, maybe we can entice those students to get involved in the profession. Now we'll talk a little bit about the different sections, and all the graphs here between auditing, financial and accounting reporting, business environment concepts, and regulation, they all will be presented in the same format. I think it's interesting, though, from my perspective as a state board member, some of the nuances of each of the different sections. And the way it's broken out, just to describe it a little bit, on the far left column, you certainly have a percentage of those who would have passed the particular sections in those particular years. And then you have the bar graphs between Japan, the Middle East, and then, of course, the domestic exam. And it shows in that particular graphic that the numbers of individuals taking the exam, if you look at Japan and the Middle East, and of course Colleen will talk about that more in a second, is certainly increasing, and that's a good thing. We think that's because there's been more of an effort in marketing to those international students that the exam's out there, they can take the exam in those locations, and so we hope that the numbers would be increasing, and of course they are. So the volumes of those who are taking the exam are going up. Depending on the particular section, those passing those sections of the exam, again, if you look at the international part of it, some are going up, some are going down. And when we get into some of the other sections, I'll try to point out where the pass rates in particular categories or sections aren't as high as what some of the other sections are. And certainly auditing and FAR are two of those that are very different from BEC and Reg, and I'll point out particular reasons why. Keep in mind the business environment concept section, if you're familiar with the exam, the other three sections have a simulation. All of them have 3 testlets or multiple choice questions. The BEC section doesn't have a simulation section, rather it has the essay part. So that's the only place where there is essay questions. And so when you think about foreign candidates and answering essay type questions in English, so English is their second language, it's only understandable that that particular section might be more difficult for those international candidates. And if you compare that particular section to the other 3, you can certainly see why the pass rates for those candidates might be a little bit lower than the other 3 sections. You look at FAR, which is financial accounting and reporting, obviously for those candidates, that's the highest percentage of pass rate, and again, because it's normal accounting, and it's something that they can certainly master maybe quicker than the English language. The next section dealing with Reg, again, that's U.S. tax law. And again, that has certain particular nuances that a foreign candidate might not be able to master as quickly, again, as accounting and reporting, and just like the BEC section. So there's other challenges in that particular module and section that aren't present in the other 3 sections. So what's going on with IQEX? What is it? I think, again, Bill Tracy could certainly be up here and talk more clearly about what IQEX is than I can. But really what it is, it's an examination to become qualified, to be licensed for those individuals who are licensed in a country that has a mutual recognition agreement with our state boards. Those entities, or those countries, excuse me, right now would be New Zealand, Australia, Canada, Hong Kong, Ireland, and Mexico. And so those individuals, if they're licensed or professionally qualified by a professional association of those countries, can be eligible to be licensed in the United States as a CPA if they pass the IQEX exam. Now the IQEX exam, beginning in November of 2012, will really be the reg section of the CPA exam. I think it was a wise move to just use that section of the exam because that, again, deals with U.S. tax law, and that's where a lot of the foreign candidates that are in those particular areas probably would be practicing as a CPA or would want that designation. But also because the number of candidates who are wanting to be eligible to be a CPA, certainly from those countries, has reduced. And the speculation would be is because of the increase in IFRS across those different jurisdictions. The reg part, again, it's going to be the same exam that our candidates take. They'll have the same sample test, the same tutorial that our candidates have available to them. And it's only going to be administered in the second month of each of the different windows. And you see there, it's listed as February, May, August, and November. And again, that starts in November of 2012 at any Prometric site. Now I'll talk a little bit about some of the changes in the Board of Examiners and the appointments. Every year, just like every other committee, there's a portion of our members that go off the Board of Examiners and a new portion of members that come on the Board of Examiners. I'm actually entering my last year of my third term on the Board of Examiners, each of them being a year long. Again, it's been an invaluable experience, and I would encourage any of you who are interested in that to certainly let individuals know that you are. I forgot to mention at the beginning, and I wanted to do that I'm very beholden to Ken Bishop and certainly Craig Mills, who both were very instrumental in allowing me to serve on the Board of Examiners, and I thank him every time I see him, and if I haven't thanked him in this meeting, I've reminded myself to do so, because I certainly appreciate the support they gave me to give me a chance to serve on the Board of Examiners. So the present composition, or at least the composition of our Board of Examiners that will begin in January 1st of 2013, is listed there. And again, Wendy will continue as our chairperson. And the individuals that are starred there would be the individuals that certainly represent other state boards. And I know some of them are here today. In fact, some of them are sitting right beside me there. They may not even have known I was going to mention them. But Russ Friedewald is sitting right next to me from Illinois. Barbara Lay, I think, is here. I haven't seen Barbara, but I think she's here. She's here. We have Kate Mooney from Minnesota. Is here, and we're welcoming those folks certainly as they begin their term on the Board of Examiners coming up in January. We also have, so we have the Board of Examiners, then we have three different committees underneath the Board of Examiners. We have a psychometric committee, we have the State Board Committee, and of course then we have the Content Committee. And the psychometric committee is really the science of the CPA exam. Whenever I explain to anybody about my service on the Board of Examiners, whether it be to fellow CPAs like yourself or to students, I always talk about I never understood the science of the CPA exam. That's what I always find as a real treat, is the science of the exam. And that's what the psychometricians deal with. State Board Committee deals with communications with state boards. And we have most of those folks are here today. We have, of course, Barbara. Then we have Dan Sweetwood, I know, is here. Roberta Newhouse is sitting behind me, and she's a new member. Mark Crocker, Jimmy Corley, and Bobby Creech are all new members of the State Board Committee, and I'm sure will do a great job. The Content Committee deals with the actual structure of the committee, and there's 4 subcommittees dealing with each section of the exam of the Content Committee. So again, it's there's a lot of volunteers, a lot of individuals who are involved in putting on the exam and making sure that it's relevant and that we're doing the right, having the right issues, the right topics that we're testing for our candidates. As far as communications that the Board of Examiner does with state boards, there's always outreach, and Mike Decker is here. He's always available to any state board who wants him to come to their state and talk about the CPA exam, any facets of the CPA exam. Mike's made many trips to many of you already. If he hasn't made a trip to your state, please request him to do so, because I think it's always invaluable to have such a resource, talk about the exam, and allay any of the fears that we may have as state board members. Just lists on this slide some of the things there that the Board of Examiners tries to do in providing outreach to the different state boards. Certainly there's forums that have been held. There was one in Florida in May. The next one that's coming up in January is in Dallas. They do have, after every Board of Examiner meeting, the chairperson of the Board of Examiners and also the chairperson of the State Board Committee, which will be Barbara, hold a forum for state boards to participate and to find out what's went on at the Board of Examiners meeting. So those are all good opportunities for those of us on state boards to find out what's going on with the exam, to raise issues that we may have, and to provide feedback, and I think that's excellent. Hot items for candidates in conclusion. One of the things would be the CSO, which is the Content Specification Outline. It has been updated primarily just to incorporate the clarity standards. And so there's not a lot of changes there other than terminology to make it consistent with the clarity standards. The quarterly score release timeline updates, it says starting in June of 2012, is where it started to be posted on AICPA Insights blog and also AICPA.org. It's interesting because I am on the AICPA Insights blog, and I checked again today, and sure enough, there is a portion of the blog which gives the candidates when the timeline is, when they can expect scores to be released, and so on. You talk about social media, and the candidates certainly understand blogging and that type of thing. Whenever I speak to students about the Board of Examiners, I always mention to them that they can certainly get onto the NASBA site on Facebook. When I say that, the professors are always kind of laughing and snickering. The students are right on it. They're either writing it down or they're already there, and so they do understand the power of Facebook or blogging and that type of thing. And lastly, I'd just like to highlight the last slide there because, again, I always emphasize that to students. Thiswaytocpa.com is a great site. If you do nothing else with the candidates in your state, please inform them about This Way to CPA. It's a great site. It gives them a lot of good information. It kind of takes them step by step in how to what they need to know in taking the exam, and really can allay any anxiety. So I've taken far too long already, but thank you very much, and if we have time, I'll certainly entertain any questions, and of course Mike Decker's here to answer them.